In this episode, I had an inspired conversation with my colleague and friend Houlie Duque from HomeschooltoGo. Houlie brings a wealth of experience as a teacher, bilingual program founder, and homeschooling mom of a toddler. This episode is perfect for parents educating bilingual children or Spanish learners. You will walk away with practical ideas for creating a Spanish immersion experience at home. We touched on different topics, but two highlights stood out. Her powerful advice for teens to take their Spanish learning beyond academic, and also her beautiful memories of growing up in Colombia. Be sure to listen until the end for a delightful Spanish song that is perfect for capturing your children's attention. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Bienvenidos to the podcast for Bilingual Mindsets. I am Karim Morato, your host and Spanish language coach. You are in the right place if you want company in your bilingual journey for your family or for yourself. Mi casa es tu casa. ¿Listos? 1, 2, 3. Aquí vamos. Hello, everyone. I'm here with my friend, colleague, hermana, sister, founder of HomeschooltoGo, and she's joining us from Canada. But I gotta tell you, she has a beautiful Colombian heart, and we're gonna be talking more about that. Hola, hola, Houlie, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, thank you so much for having me, Karim. I love what you're doing for your community and love every time you bring me to be a part of it. So happy to be here today.
All right. I am so excited. Parents, we're going to be talking a lot about immersion strategy. So make sure that you still until the end because we are going to be bringing not just so much of her own personal experience, but also, Julie, you're going to talk to us about how you do it in your curriculum and with your students, right? But to start, let's first address the question about your Colombian heritage, because I know you were a bilingual student before when you were living in Colombia, right? So,
Yeah.
and also for our listeners that don't know about Colombia, I never been there myself. Tell us about how beautiful is Colombia.
Of course. So I'll start with the bilingual education. I think I consider myself very fortunate, very privileged because my parents made a huge effort to make an investment on my education and enrolled me in a bilingual school, which is, not necessarily the cheapest option when you're growing up in a South American country.
Yes.
But I can say confidently that decision that they made changed my life entirely. I built so many opportunities, so many relationships in my entire career around the fact that I could speak both languages. And even today, as a professional living in Canada, which obviously I would never have been able to do if I only spoke Spanish, but also being a bilingual educator, right? So having the ability to be in Canada, an English-speaking country, but having Spanish as an asset has allowed me to impact so many more people and connect with so many more people and, help students and families do the same for their kids as my parents did for me, even when they're not able to afford a prestigious or, bilingual education private school.
Wow. So how was growing up in Colombia as a child? So take us back to your childhood and you living in Colombia and you learning English.
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in the Caribbean, so the city of Cartagena or Cartagena. It's on the Caribbean coast of Colombia, so it's a very particular type of culture. It's very different from, let's say, a person who's from Bogota in the Andes of Colombia. And so hot weather, happy, dancey.
Oh my gosh, that's you. You're describing yourself. That's how I know you.
Warm people, very outdoorsy. And so for me, I will say also very connected to nature because you're spending so much time outside. You're by the ocean, So growing up in Colombia to me was amazing. It's something that, people now in this day and age, like they look at Cartagena like this amazing city and it is so beautiful. And I never knew how beautiful it was until I moved away. So like every time I'm there and it's like such a beautiful place and so unique, I realized really it's crazy when you grow up in it, you don't see like how fortunate you are. So yeah, it was definitely a really nice childhood growing up. My dad was not bilingual, but my mom was. And we spent a lot of time by the ocean, camping on the beach, just doing, all kinds of things. Like my grandfather, for example, would have us miss out on school some days to go to camp and watch like a meteor shower, stuff like that.
Wow.
Had a lot of appreciation. Like my parents definitely planted in me the seed of appreciation for nature and appreciation for the world and strong values. So I appreciate that a lot.
Wow.
I also was going to a Cambridge school all the way. You know how schools work in South America. It's different from how it is in the US, where you're splitting preschool, elementary, middle school, high school. It's all the same institution. So I had the opportunity to grow up with role models that stayed with me for a long period of time, which I think it's very important for building that community growing up and create a stronger connection, more like family, with your role models. And I think that if I have to pick or like single out one specific experience for growing up in my bilingual education, I'll say there was a specific time when I was in elementary where I was falling behind. It's grade 1, and I was falling behind in mathematics. I remember my mom, she sat with me at this point. I probably was like, as far as grade levels, as far as like grades, scores, academic scores, I was pretty average. And I remember my mom was like, how is this possible that my child, because my mom is a very high IQ human, how is it possible that my child is falling behind in math at grade 1? And then she sat with me and gave me a lot of attention. I think for me, the attention coming from her was the determining factor.
Wow.
From that point on, she helped me build my confidence. And from that point on, grade 1 on, I was always at the top of my class. And, she remembers all the details about it, but I just remember feeling important because my mom was sitting with me, be good. And I even went on in grade 2 to show that dedication for my learning and the same dedication that my mom was showing me by investing that extra time, right? And I remember there was we had at our school, we had the ambassador of the UK in Colombia visit the school and present me with a student of the month award. And I was it was a new award that they were doing. And so I was the student to receive this award, and it was given to me by the ambassador of the UK. It was a big deal. Okay. But I think it marks me, it really
Wow.
a position where I felt, well, I really have something special. And if I put my effort towards it, I can, I can stand out. So that's, I would say, the most determining experience that I can single out for my memories of growing up bilingually in Colombia.
Wow. But I want to say, Julia, this is such a beautiful experience that you share with us, because there is a lot of mamas listening right now, and some of them are there working really hard. They're homeschooling and they are adding Spanish to their hard work. And I just want parents to hear the power of the influence of a mom, of a dad. So thank you so much for that inspiring story. It was beautiful. So now tell us, how did you ended up being a teacher?
Let me see. Because I was doing so good in school, and because I had strong values at home, and there was always an emphasis on kindness, emphasis on helping others. I think that the easiest way for me to help others was always through tutoring. I remember even when I was in high school, I was like studying for my exams, and I would create like these study guides for myself and like whoever friend was I was studying with. And I remember we loved these study guides, and my friends loved them so much that I ended up creating a business around it. So I was selling the study guides at school, and I was having like I made hundreds of dollars as a high school, middle school student. I can't remember which grade it was. I probably did it a few years.
Wow.
But I just always kind of had like, because I was at that position, in that position where I felt I could understand concepts well, then I felt, how can I use this gift to help others, through the values that I was being taught at home. And so teaching always felt very natural to me. So even when I was in school, I will make like little side hustle money tutoring younger kids that way. And although, I never really envisioned myself as a teacher, as a teenager or as a young person in school, but I think it just became so obvious that this was a way that I could really help others, that I just kept having opportunities, like even after I graduated and after I graduated university and before I got my education background and certification, I was having teaching jobs, and that practice, I realized how good I was at it and how much I really enjoyed it. To an extent, we'll get into that when I tell you more about my transition into homeschooling. That's how I ended up being a teacher.
And that's how I guess you transition into being a homeschool mom.
Yeah. So when I was a teacher, I never really taught in a full-time structure, meaning the schools that hired me to teach at their institutions, they would always try to offer me a full-time position, but I wouldn't take one because I didn't enjoy, like, let's say I would take a position for 3 months, for 2 months, and it was more like supply teaching. And I found it was so exhausting, and it was frustrating. And the reason why it was exhausting and frustrating, it's not because like I have pretty good energy levels. I do a lot at the same time, but it was mostly because I found that in the structure of a classroom, which is one teacher to 18 plus students, it was impossible for me to reach my fullest potential because I knew that all those kids sitting there had higher needs than what I could provide in that setting. And so for me, I'm always about the big picture, like I've always had that in my heart, big impact. And I knew that the big impact I wanted to create was never going to happen through a classroom, because those students were not getting the best. And no matter how hard I worked and how exhausted I was at the end of the day, I was still not making the best impact that I could. So I knew when I would have my own children that the best way to get them the best educational experience, was through homeschool. And I had a vision at that time in my career where I said, if I can empower other parents to be homeschoolers, then I can help change the world at a much higher scale that I can as a teacher in a classroom where I can only impact 18 students.
Wow. Which is, I think, one of the reasons you and I connected so strong, because we believe all about impact and starting with our own children, right? And let's talk about the impact that many parents are doing right now, choosing to raise bilingual children. How can parents take that idea and create an immersion experience at home? And I'm going to tell you, many of my parents do not speak Spanish. They are learning Spanish with their children. So let's jump into that question and tell us more about that.
Absolutely. That's the first thing that I was thinking about when you said that the parents don't know Spanish is a lot of the things that you teach as a homeschool parent, you're not required to know first, like before they do. I think this is pretty popular among the homeschool community. It's like, it's a process of learning. You're learning along with them. And so languages are not easy to learn. They take a lot of consistency. They take a lot of trial and error, and they take a lot of growth mindset, meaning you're not good today. You keep going. You'll be better tomorrow and better tomorrow. So I find children learn a lot more from what they see than what they're told. So if you are a parent raising your child bilingually and you're learning Spanish as you go, the attitude, the behavior, the dedication, and the commitment that you show towards that learning is going to be more impactful than what you're learning in itself, if that makes sense. So yeah, if there's something that I can say to the parents is cultivate your own love for learning and let your children witness that and let that be the thing that creates the impact in the process of learning the language.
This is good. And now I know I have some of my audience are also teenagers, but I know teenagers also have the power to impact their home. So if you're a teenager listening to this podcast and say, well, this is all about the parents. No, this is also about you because you also have the power to take what you're learning and impact your home and say, we're going to be learning Spanish in this home.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you mean like in a situation where a child wants to learn Spanish and the parent doesn't want to? Is that what it is?
Well, no, I have teenagers that are taking my Spanish courses, and some teenagers are listening to my podcast for mindset to just learn a strategy. So the majority, I have a lot of parents listening, but also I have some teenagers listening because they are hungry to learn to
Yeah,
speak Spanish.
you have a voice and you should use it, and you should and I bet you as a teenager, if you show your parent commitment and love for a special type of learning, they will support you in that.
Yes.
So,
You may tell them later, can you take me to Colombia, please?
exactly. Yeah, I think that's also a really important thing. I imagine we'll be talking about today. Is like for kids that maybe like if you're a parent and you have a child that doesn't have a lot of motivation towards learning Spanish, and you find yourself forcing the learning or pushing the narrative. I think that it's important to know that for children in general, teenagers will voice it more directly, but even for little kids, elementary, preschool, they won't voice it, but they'll just like not put the love into it as much. So when they can't create a direct association between the concept being learned and the life application, it's harder for them to find encouragement. So I have a mom that she's just messaged me this week saying she's frustrated because she's located in Argentina and she's raising her child bilingually, English and Spanish, and she speaks English to her child all the time. But then she has other family members that are like, we don't speak that language in this country. Like, why are you speaking, And so it's kind of influencing the child in the opposite way. And I say to her, try to seek opportunities where they see, because this is a preschool child, okay? So you have to be a lot more, let's say, experiential or graphic. Like it's the concept
more creative.
The concept of like, this is going to be good for your future is not. So try to bring him on into we have group calls where all the students show each other their projects and they're all speaking in English, and then the next week they're all speaking in Spanish. So when these kids have these settings where they need to use their language skills as a survival mechanism or as a social mechanism to connect with the others, they're going to be more likely to want to learn because they understand the life application, the direct association between what they're learning and the life application of it.
And I think this is a good point to connect with some of your foundation when it comes to HomeschooltoGo, which is a curriculum. So maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that and talk about how strong you are about education being holistic.
Yeah. Okay. How will I explain? Okay, so let's talk about what holistic education means. So holistic education means that we're going beyond academic learning. So where you compare it to, for example, like in the schools, they have a huge focus or emphasis in intellectual development. But in holistic education, we look at education in terms of critical thinking, like cognitive learning, but also in critical thinking and
Mm-hmm.
creativity, in emotional development, social development, physical development, spiritual development and values, environmental awareness, personal development, right? Like we're not just thinking of one pillar, we're thinking of many, because I think that as you like, academics may develop some skills that will be good for specific careers, but there's more than career to life, right?
Mm.
I think with the new age of AI, like there's so many parts of the spectrum of education that are important to take into account. So holistic education is a big one for us. Learning. So in the projects that we share, you'll find it's not like, okay, you're coming into math class, you're coming into English class. It's not like that. The parents get a weekly package, and the weekly package has activities, projects, and we'll talk about project-based learning, that have everything in it. So perhaps you're doing a project that has to do with science as a theme, but you're doing writing, you're doing math inside the project. So like they let's say you're studying the farm, so you learn where our foods come from, and so you're learning what the animals are eating, but then we give you like a hypothetical situation where you have to figure out, if you have 5 chickens, how much foods do you have to feed them, and how much is that going to cost you? So then they're doing a little bit of math, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So that's an example of how with one project we teach all the subjects, and that's how it happens in life. Like in life, you're not going to go to work and they tell you, okay, today we're going to focus on your tasks of math. No, it's like, it's holistic, right? So we do that.
Mm-hmm.
We split the activity so that the parents can do the activity first in the language that is the dominant language. So let's say in this case, for most of your community, the dominant language will be English. So they do
Mm-hmm.
in English, they become familiar with the concepts, they use their hands, and we'll talk about experiential learning as well. And then after they have that experience in their mind, then the next day they're going to see the same package, the same activity, but it's all in Spanish.
Mm.
The thing now is it's going to be harder for them to comprehend it in a language that it's not their first, right? But because they've already done it all in English, they have some memory to extract, like they have some memory to refer to understand what's going on. And it's natural that at first they may not know exactly everything that's going on, and they're missing a lot of the stuff that's going on. But those experiences are necessary, because when you are in the environment of, okay, I'm reading in Spanish, I have to do this activity in Spanish, I have to present this activity to my friends in Spanish. In that moment of, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. In that moment of struggle, that's when your brain is going to dig deep into the knowledge that you have within you, and you're going to have to apply it. So it's important to create those environments of challenge where you will have to dig deep. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I want to touch about several things because number one, I love what you say about holistic learning. And parents, you may be asking, I thought this was a podcast about Spanish. But what we are trying to tell you as an expert is that Spanish is not an academic subject. It's a human skill that you can connect to other subjects. And going back to the immersion experience, that is so important because many parents are learning at home in English. So give us some ideas, which you already did, but let's expand more about the students are studying the regular subjects, but then how can we take that outside an academic subject and create an immersion experience and use, take that knowledge, advantage of that knowledge and use it to learn Spanish?
Yeah, so I suppose through project-based education, that's what the structure of the activities are like.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you're not just learning and, doubling down like they do in schools on or in academic curriculums where it's like all memorization, all, you're using a plethora of skills to be able to explore this concept deeper. So, it has to have a touch of like research, like there's a research phase. So you're looking up, you're learning, you're reading, you're understanding the concept. Then there has to be like an execution. So you're using your hands. Maybe you're creating a recipe. Maybe you're creating a presentation. You're filming a movie, whatever it is. And then there's the presentation at the end. So this is where you take whatever you researched, executed, and then you bottle it up to present it or to offer value. So that's the point where the learning goes from, this is everything that I worked on, and now this is how I connected to offering value to my community, and where like the heartstrings are pulled and the connections are created and the memories become long lasting. So if you acquire all this knowledge just so that you can write an exam and pass it, you'll forget it. Like, that is right?
Now, listen, you're talking to my teenagers right now, learning Spanish, because I think that this is what I call, I tell my parents when I'm doing a training, I say, there is something about a process of input and output. If I'm spending the majority of my time learning just input, and there is no output being created, we're never going to speak. We're never going to interact with the language. And that it's so powerful that we are learning about project-based learning, which you are passionate about that, and how that can help us for language acquisition. So parents and students, I want you to think about what you are doing right now. You are working hard. You are studying Spanish. What can you add? What kind of project you can add? And not just a project to learn, but I love what you say. It is a project to bless the community. It is a project. And remember, community doesn't mean just going to a group. Community is your own home. I remember when my students were doing Spanish too, they were doing a project about, they were studying past tense pretérito. So they did all this research, and then they pretend they went to the country and they now need to present in past tense. And one of the projects that follow after that was that they needed to cook a dish. Now, let me tell you, I remember one student, he learned how to do rice with chicken from Nicaragua. And he said to me, Mrs. Morato, now this is my family's favorite recipe. They ask me for that recipe every week. So he was in charge to cook every week.
Right. So I bet you all the concepts that he learned during that process, he's never going to forget, because there's an emotional element. You talk about this all the time, the emotional component of learning. But if we were going to just bring it all back to science, like the studies do say experiential learning, so learning that involves hands-on and, offering to someone, blah, 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 is tied to 65% more retention over academic learning and 50% more engagement. So meaning the students want to do it more. And the other thing too is that, because you said, like, what are some strategies? At the end of every unit, of every project in our program, we always ask the students to create a reflection. The reflection is also tied to 25% more learning and personal development. And this is something that translates to all areas of life. Like, if you get used to, make this a habit out of your learning in Spanish, you can do it. Okay, what did we learn? Okay, so then this could be like a cool little unit for doing past tense in Spanish. We're going to talk about what we learned, what we liked, and you do that with the projects that you learned, with the birthdays that you attended, with the sports that you participated in, with an event that happened that you didn't like. If you do that for everything, you are going to become a better human, in like integralmente, like holistically. You're going to become a better human. So it's something that doesn't just apply to the academics, but adding a reflection component to the end of every event, project, everything is such a game changer for raising a holistic student.
And I think that reflection doesn't have to be maybe a written reflection. I do remember one of my students saying to me that every day, at the end of the day, her mom, they used to do a walk where they will talk in Spanish about what the day was like. So parents, be creative. I love these ideas that you are giving us. And let's go back to the emotional part, because you believe about the emotional part of the student. We are not just intellect, we also have emotions. And Spanish is such an emotional language. It's so romantic. So can you tell us more about that aspect of the emotional development of the children and how learning Spanish can support that development?
Emotional emotions are everything. Like they're in everything. So if you're so problem solving, critical thinking, okay? What's the first challenge that a student needs to face when they hear a problem? It's the emotions that they feel as a result of that problem. So if you can't get past the first hurdle of solving a problem, you can't even get to the intellectual part. Like, it doesn't matter what you know about it. If you don't know how to regulate your emotions, if you're not familiar with experiencing difficult emotions, you can't face any challenge in life. So emotions come before intellectual learning. I think this is really important to take into account. And it's crazy that so many academic curriculums don't even cover emotional. So for me, and you know, universally as well, the way that we like the rubric or the progression for emotional development training is first awareness of the emotion, and second, the ability to communicate the emotion, right? Because once you communicate, you can deal with it easier, and you can set boundaries and all the things, like, you know, for yourself and for others. So communicating, so being aware of emotions and being able to communicate those emotions. So in our program, we offer parents resources that they can incorporate into their day-to-day life. So to give you an example, and this is something that I wanted to offer you, so we'll get into it at the end, a Calming Corner poster collection. So you have, it's similar to what you have there in your back wall. I see it. It's like a chart with all the different emotions, the little emojis that tell you name the emotion, right? And I think I heard this, and there was a sociologist that was talking about how in America, when you ask people how they feel, most of them can't come up with more than 2, 3, or 4 words to describe it. But if you look at that chart that's behind you, and the resource that I'll share, there's like 20 words that we can use. So that's number one, being able to expand your vocabulary to be able to express truly how you feel with accuracy. Okay. Because that's going to make it, for your own awareness, better for dealing with anything in life, and moving on in the progression of emotional, intellectual, for problem solving. And then, so awareness first. And so for awareness, you also have to create questions. So we have to ask, we have to have a space in our day-to-day, once a day minimum, hopefully more than that, where we are checking in and we're figuring it out. Okay, how do we feel right now? Why do we feel that way? So those questions, those conversations are important to have. So that's another resource that we offer. We call it the daily mental health check-in. We have it in English and we have it in Spanish. So basically we're asking, like, what's your 3 things that you do for your morning routine? How many hours did you sleep today? How much water did you drink? What are the 3 things that you're grateful for today? For Christians families, we offer them, they can use a proverb from the Bible, or for perhaps families that care about values can use a positive affirmation if they're not super familiar or they don't use the Bible on a day-to-day basis, but values matter to them. And then we do like the things that we will do today. So this creates a practice of check-in and awareness, which also opens up the field or the conversation for later on being able to look back on it and reflect. this is what we planned for a day to go. This is how it actually went down. What happened? How did I feel? Why did I feel that way? So yeah, so we give parents resources that work as reminders to create the habit of checking in for developing awareness, and then also resources for developing vocabulary on how to communicate those emotions.
And I think that is so important because they are not going to be learning, trying to remember the lesson about pretérito tense, but they actually will remember how Spanish made them feel when they were studying. And think about how many families, how many teenagers, they stop learning because how the way they feel about Spanish. So I do love that idea about being able to talk about our emotions before learning. Basically, that's what I say. Before anything, even students that are maybe feeling, oh my goodness, I'm failing Spanish. Spanish is no fun. Let's talk about the feelings, right? Let's change how we talk about learning Spanish. What would you say to a teenager that feels that Spanish is not fun? They have to learn a lot of grammar rules. They have to learn it because it's a requirement for the transcript. What kind of motivation you want to give them if they feel pretty defeated about the subject?
I think that if you can learn a language, you can develop so much confidence. And so this is what I'll say to the teenagers. Anything that you learn in life that is, like, this is the person who I am now, Houlie only Spanish, right? Back in Colombia before my education. And Houlie, this is the person, sorry, that was the person that I was before. This is the person that I am now. Bilingual, successful, all the opportunities, international, traveling, blah, blah, blah. So the person that I used to be did not have the skills of the person that I am now. To be able to jump from this to this person, I had to exercise a lot of growth mindset, and I have to exercise a lot of facing a challenge and not letting that challenge be bigger than me. If I let the challenge be bigger than me, I'll stay the person that I am now with the limitations that I have now. If I continue to face the challenge at my pace, eventually I will overcome it, and these limitations will be behind me. So I think that the reason why you don't want to learn grammar, the reason why Spanish is boring to you, is not really because it's boring. It's because it's challenging and you're not giving yourself the time to face it slowly and to strengthen your growth mindset. So I think growth mindset is so important, not just for learning Spanish, but for everything that requires upgrading yourself in life. So think about it this way. If it's too much of a challenge, just break it up. Okay. Maybe don't do it 2 hours a day. Do it 20 minutes a day. Right. And then little by little, you'll start to gain confidence. Once you start to get better, it won't be boring anymore. Grammar won't feel like a boring thing anymore because you will be confident in it. That's the same process that is going to apply to anything in life. Building a family, building a relationship, raising kids, getting a good job, being good being, making a positive impact in anything in life. So I would encourage you, if you find Spanish boring, to ask yourself if you really find it boring, or if perhaps you're just finding it too challenging, and if there are ways that you can help yourself to make that challenge feel a little bit more attainable by breaking it up in smaller portions that you can take one at a time and then build your resistance over time.
And I love your advice. And parents, if you're watching or you're listening, I want you to listen to what you have said several times in a different way. Let's not avoid the challenge. Learning a language is not going to be easy. Learning a language is going to challenge our mindset, our brain. It's going to hurt sometimes, right? But I love what you're saying is like, let's not avoid the inconvenience. Let's face the challenge, because the fruit, the benefits of developed bilingual and raising bilingual children is so much. Now, I want us to go back a little bit about methodology methodology. And thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel motivated now. Like, yes, I can conquer the world. Now, listen, let's go and talk about Montessori, and tell us more, for the parents that don't know what is Montessori. I use the Montessori style to inspire me when I am doing my elementary lessons. I have an elementary program, and I always trying to be inspired. How does a child think? Because I also teach the teenagers, and the teenagers are a little bit different than young children. So tell us more about Montessori, how you use it in your curriculum, and how can parents use this methodology as an immersion strategy.
Absolutely. So Montessori, just to explain first the meaning of it, it's an educational methodology known worldwide. It's one of the most prestigious and recognized around the world. And basically, what they stress is the importance of developing the whole child. So it's similar to that concept of holistic learning. Not similar. It's Montessori methodology. It's a holistic education methodology. So raising or educating a child intellectually, socially, emotionally, and physically, and emphasizing on independence, responsibility, and the love for learning. So they have a few pillars. I think that some of the stuff that we use in our curriculum are the things that are easier to implement, because sometimes when a parent is trying to be a Montessori parent, is trying to follow all the rules, one of the pillars is to have a prepared environment. So, you kind of have to have, if you have a little kid, you kind of have to have everything at their reach. And sometimes preparing the environment cannot be an easy thing, an easy goal for a lot of us. But I think that the important thing to take into account is to give your child the dignity of doing the things that perhaps you don't credit as a child to be able to do. So, when we're raising little kids, and also Latina moms, it's a part of our culture to do so much for our kids. But in reality, it's so much better for them to be given that chance. And in most cases, I would say, if not all cases, they want to be a part of it. Like I taught preschool students, they want to help you in the kitchen. You just don't want them to help because it's more work. But it's like everything in life. When you invest up front, you get a bigger payback later on. So Montessori methodology, kids, like, for example, there's like tools that you can have for like knives that are not super sharp, so they can start cutting veggies, or even just start with the Play-Doh, and then while you're cooking, you don't have to have your child distracted or occupied, because they're part of everything that you're doing. So I created my program. I have this for the preschool parents. I have like this folding board that you can create. So all the moms that complain about all the laundry that they have to do, I literally take all of my 4-year-old's laundry, plop it in his bed, give him the folding board. He's in charge of folding it and putting it away. And of course, this was not an easy habit to implement up front. But now that it is, I have years and hours of my life that I save from folding laundry. That's not even the most important part of it. The biggest part is that Gio, my son, he feels as a 4-year-old already a confident, significant part of, like, he can make an impact in his environment because he's capable of taking care of himself. And I think on different grade levels and cognitive levels, that's a lot of what Montessori is about. They also do a lot of mixed age groupings. So we have that in our program as well. When we bring the kids together to show their projects to each other, we have them in different ages, because that way the older kids can feel like they're leaders. Then they also have a lot of hands-on, obviously, and sensory exploration, which is something that we apply a lot. Intrinsic motivation and self-directed learning. So that means that instead of giving them a lesson with right, wrong answer, you're giving them a project that has an outcome, right? And as a teacher, you're not the person that gives them the answer or tells them right or wrong. You're just the one that's helping figure out the path with them. I would say we have a lot of things in common with the Montessori philosophy. But in most cases, if you want to apply it to your home, it's like, give your child the chance to struggle and figure out, and give them the tools so that it can be an attainable goal for them. Like in the higher grade levels, we get students to do budgets. Like we teach them how to use Excel, and we don't necessarily explain to them exactly how to use it. We just tell them, create the columns with your expenses, compare and then we let them go and see what they come up with. So yeah, take the time to allow your child to explore and to make mistakes and to earn for themselves that process of, I can climb this mountain without somebody pulling me.
And I love what you're saying about the environment. And I think that sometimes one of the things, we focus so much in the curriculum that we forget the environment. And the environment is, how can I create a bilingual environment at home? So let's see everything that we are doing, and that's going to be a curriculum, especially with young children, right? If we are cooking, let's learn in Spanish and or apply what we're learning. I do have a unit about food, and we teach the students or the children how to talk about the stuff around the table, not just the name of the food, but then how can we interact with each other, where we are asking each other, please pass me the butter, please pass me the bread, because that is so important. Maybe books, how can I create that environment where children can see the books, where children can see the toys, and where they will know how to apply what they're learning in Spanish when they are playing and interacting. So thank you so much for really showing us not just the methodologies, but how to apply it. Not a lot of people have the gift to explain, how do I apply this? So I can see clearly that you have the gift. Now, let's talk about your young child, Gio. Tell us about the challenges that you face raising a bilingual child.
Well, I think the main challenge is the one that most bilingual parents probably face, and is that when they're more little, there's always one language that is going to be the most dominant. Okay.
Mm.
And this happens even for households where both languages are spoken at home at the same degree. Okay. In my case, I live in Canada, and so the environment around us is in English. Okay. I am Spanish speaking. So I understand that my child is going to grow with the dominant English over the Spanish. And, I'm speaking for not just myself when I say that this is something that concerns, when you're raising, oh no, they're losing their Spanish. And all my family in Colombia even is the same. It's like, make sure he doesn't lose his Spanish. Like, they're so worried about it. And so I imagine for other types of households, it will be the reverse situation, where they want English to be adopted because Spanish is dominant in the environment. So there is, I think, from my experience teaching bilingual students for over 12 years, it is natural for this to be the way. There's always one language that is more dominant than the other. Eventually, it comes together and they'll be fluent in both if you are consistent. So some of the strategies, for example, that I use with Gio is I try as much as possible to speak to him in Spanish. And so it does happen sometimes that I'll say to him something in Spanish and he'll answer me in English. Okay. Mm-hmm. When he does this, I don't go, say it in Spanish, because that's like, I'm telling him he just did something wrong. And I don't want to create negative emotions around the learning of Spanish. But what I do is, for example, I say, Gio, ¿qué te vas a poner hoy? What are you wearing today for clothes? And he says, I'm wearing the yellow shirt. I say, te vas a poner la camisa amarilla. And then, so whatever he just said to me in English, I say to him back in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And then I ask him a question, ¿la camisa qué? And then he answers, amarilla. Okay. So it is a process that does require consistency. And again, you invest up front. So then Another game that I play with him is pre-K, you have to be so theatrical, but you can once they're growing up, you don't have to be as theatrical, but you can still play games, okay? And so, for example, I say we're calling a friend, Gio, I'm calling a friend, but they don't speak Spanish. No, they don't speak English. So I need you to translate everything that the friend is saying. So then
Oh,
so then Gio picks up the phone and I'm like, hello. And then he starts speaking and then I ask him to translate everything that I'm saying. So that's another way, through games. He's like, I see that he's understanding. Um,
that's so creative. I never thought about it.
yeah, so I get him to be the translator. So another thing too is creating environments where the language is like needed as a means to connect, as a means for survival. So, I'm not a big friend of screens and TV and movies and any of that, but I do allow it every now and again. I like the show Bluey because they're low dopamine producing, right? Like milder sounds, like lighter colors. The topics that they talk about are actually relevant to real life situations. Like if you're watching Bluey as a parent, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely a problem that has come up at home. So if I let him watch Bluey, it has to be in Spanish. So he has to develop his Spanish skills in order to be able to watch a movie in Spanish. And then what I also notice as well is like when we do travel to Colombia, there's not even any resistance. So that's the other thing. So, okay, this is a note for the parents. You feel like you're trying in the Spanish and trying and trying and trying. And you don't have a lot of hope for like, is he really learning? Is he, and if you are consistent, even if you don't see it in the day to day, it is helping. So for me, Gio, like when we're here, again, it's not as often that he uses the Spanish to speak back to me. But when we go to Colombia and everybody around him is speaking Spanish, it's like a single day didn't even go by because he was already always there. And he, with his little 4-year-old Spanish accent, he communicates with everyone in Spanish. He never, he recognizes this person doesn't speak English. He doesn't waste his time speaking English to them. He speaks Spanish to them. So it's like, again, if you can continue to be consistent, you have to trust that somewhere in their brain, they're going to be building those skills and relevant. They're going to dig deep to pull those insights out to apply them to the situation. So,
and that is so real. I always tell parents, we are preparing our children for real life. So one day we never know what experience they're going to have, what opportunity, what they're going to have. And because we have done the work of educating them bilingually, they're going to use it. So excellent. I love, love, love. And by the way, Gio is so cute. When I see those pictures, I want to kiss him and hug him. He's so beautiful. So let's talk about the cultural part of learning Spanish. So you mentioned traveling to Colombia, but before we go there, I know you're a nature person, and I have a lot of parents here that love nature. Tell us how parents can use nature to incorporate an immersive experience in Spanish.
An immersive experience in Spanish. Like, again, it's the experiential learning that you can apply for when you go outside and you talk about what you see outside. So we have some resources, like, for example, the forest exploration checklist, and it's all in, we have English, we have all in Spanish as well. And so we have the different flowers that they can look for, because observational skills is something that's, nature provides us that to us. Like nature, when we're out there, we have to be observant, and obviously that's a skill. I don't think I have to argue that it's useful for many fields, but yeah, like giving them things to look for. Like if you're doing, I don't know are you familiar with the app geocaching?
No.
So geocaching is something that anybody in the world, especially in the Americas, maybe, I don't know if it's in Europe, but in anywhere in North America, you can get a geocaching app, and then you go to a given natural park, forest, whatever, that has trails, and there's people all around the world that hide these treasures. And so you're looking for the treasures. And so you can start to say directions in Spanish to lead them through, or tell them to give you directions, like for describing what they're seeing or where they need to go, etc.
And I think that it could be a time where if your child is having resistance learning Spanish because it feels too academic, right, oriented, especially when they are young, take that learning outside. Whatever you do, take it outside, and so they can connect fun with the Spanish.
That example that you just given of the mom that was going outside for a walk with her child and they would speak in Spanish, that's brilliant. I'm going to take that strategy for myself.
Yes. And, she connects when she thinks about Spanish, she connects her learning with family. One of the things I think a lot lately is about technology. Technology is growing so fast, and a lot of technology related to language learning is also growing, which is a good thing. I think it's technology always bring good things to our society, but also, there are some questions sometimes I ask. How do you think technology like AI is going to be changing the way we learn Spanish? It's scary to see some of the technology where you don't need to learn a language anymore because it's AI, the tool is there to do it for you. So as teachers, let's have that conversation so parents also kind of start thinking why it's important for our children, for our teens to go through the process of learning a language. And let's use technology to help us improve, to go learn faster. But how do we keep the balance?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that, and again, this could be a controversial opinion, but I think that if we allow technology and AI to do all the thinking for us, especially in the young ages, AI is going to get smarter and we're going to get dumber. You know what I mean?
That was not controversial. That was very straightforward.
Well, just some people may not want to hear that, and I'm not saying don't learn to use technology, because we do need to use it, but be very protective of your child when they're young and their brains are still in such a vulnerable brain development stage. Because the other thing about technology is that it creates a very immediate gratification process that is very far away from the natural processes of life. Like you look at how the plants grow, you look at, everything goes through cycles. When we think of Montessori toys, Montessori learning, there's a lot less buttons and lights and sounds, and there's a lot more like wood stuff, and the reason is when a child is using these toys or these elements, there's less dopamine, like fake dopamine spikes, and there's more. It creates less of an addiction for that instant gratification and more of a love for the process of something growing. And I think that we definitely don't want to abandon that ability. I think that AI and technological tools can be very beneficial for an adult that's already developed, that's living in this wild, crazy economy where we need to be hyper productive. And it's like the spices that you add at the end of the food, but not the prime matter of the food itself. So I think for children, keeping them away from technology, like I don't even use those apps, those language apps that put screens in front of little kids like at a young age, because I think that at the end of the day, they do more damage than they do good, because of the habits and the addictions that they're creating inside the kid's brain. I think I want my child for as long as possible to maintain that love that kids have for just doing something. Like when a child is playing with Play-Doh, when a child is making, when they're very little, they don't care so much about the end result. They're enjoying the moment, the multisensory experience. And I think all of that sensory input is really important. So as much as I think AI and technology is beneficial for the world, I don't think it's beneficial for early stage of brain development. So
Mm.
my advice there is, try to keep your child, far away from the screens and the technology in the younger ages. And I would say in our program, we don't implement technology until about grade 3. So
Wow. Well, thank you so much for saying that. I do think that there is a difference when students learn something through technology that when students receive also learning through a human person. To wrap it up, can you let us know how can my parents, my audience connect with you and learn more about Homeschool to Go?
I would love to. So you can go to our website, www.homeschooltogo.org, or you can look us up on Google, homeschooltogo.org, or go to our Instagram and message me on there. I'm very easy to access through all of our platforms. So you can do that.
Excellent. Now, the final moment is coming where parents are going to learn something from you today, and it's to encourage always Spanish expression. And what are you going to be teaching us right now?
So this one is a very effective tactic that I used as a teacher and that my child loves. And it all honestly, it really works because it's interactive. And I use it as an attention grabber. So before we're going to do something else. So let's say that you're, again, children when they're little, like I would say up to grade 2, they love theatrical, like even beyond that, but like for sure until grade 2, they're very theatrical. And every time that they see you getting into something, they're gonna be hooked. So this is a song that you can use to kind of like transition into your Spanish lesson, or you can use it in this case to transition into a Spanish guided imagery, which I am going to provide for Karim to play right after the song that I'll sing to you. And it's very simple. So do you know La Lechuza song, Karim?
No, I don't. So I'm going to be learning.
Okay, so I will sing it, and then there'll be a part for you to say the sound that I'm making, okay? So it
What
goes,
is, can you explain to parents what is lechuza?
so the lechuza is an owl. An owl. So the owl is a very calm animal that is usually associated with wisdom. But the most important part of it is that it gives children an image in their head to associate with what you're saying. So
Okay.
animals work great with kids. So it goes like this. La lechuza hace shh, hace
Shh,
como la lechuza hace,
shh,
hace.
shh.
So you'll see if you have a group of students, like let's say you have 3 kids at home, some of your kids will catch on quicker and then they'll start looking at the others and singing to each other. You can do it marching around the house, like la lechuza. Like you can use the claps, do anything, but you can use it as a transition with no previous warning. And it gives the kids enough time to be, okay, something's going on. We're going to be doing
Yes, I
now,
love it.
and it's something for them to interact. So it works really well. It works really well for kids all the way up to 8 years old. And
I love the song. I think it could be a sign the parents can start singing for the kids to remember, all right, it's Spanish time.
exactly, a transition song. And then after that, because we're using the shh, then ahora podemos empezar a hablar despacito. Vamos a empezar nuestra lección de español. We're going to start our Spanish lesson. So, use it to transition into the Spanish language if that's the way that you do it, or otherwise just saying in English, whatever works. But the good thing about the sh sound is that it's universal for quiet and calm. And so after that, you can, if the room was sounding pretty loud before the song, it's like a reset. You know what I mean? So you can bring it back down, and then you'll have another few minutes, maybe more, of calm before things get rowdy again. So
Well, I love it. I love it. I'm going to try using it with my teenager.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. You let me know.
Yes, yes. Well, Julie, was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for stopping by mi casa. And I love having you. And I know this is not going to be the last one. No.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that all of your parents can take something valuable to bring to their homes after today. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye bye. Adios. Hasta luego. Hola, are you a parent looking for guidance on helping your elementary age children learn Spanish? Make sure to sign up for my free parent webinar, How to Give Your Elementary Age Children an Authentic Spanish Learning Experience at Home, even when you do not speak the language. The link to register is on the show notes. Hasta luego. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found value and encouragement in this episode. It will mean the world to me to know how this podcast is impacting you. Por favor, please take a few minutes to let me know and leave a review. When you leave a 5-star review, it will help others discover the podcast. Do not forget to subscribe. See you soon. Hasta luego.